Okay, good afternoon everyone. Thank you very much for coming to this symposium. I think I know most people in the room, which is always a good thing. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Anthony Charles. I'm one of the lecturers in Criminology. I'm also here today wearing a slightly different hat, which is I'm the work placement and sort of internship person within Criminology. And the good speakers you have today are individuals who, for their sins, had to be interns with me during the past year, undertaking research in partnership with the Youth Offending Service in Swansea and also some of our local schools. And it's good to see some of the partner agencies here today as well. Today's format is going to be very, very simple. I'm not into elaborate shows, I don't think any of us are. And so the running order will be as per the email I sent out. I've intentionally set the running order to be one where we look more at conceptual issues. For example, understanding what early intervention and prevention can mean for people, how it can be run in schools, running all the way across into more intensive programs like the Restorative Justice Programme in Blind and Mice School, and then looking finally at harder end interventions and prevention initiatives such as the referral orders process and the new and emerging engagement of magistrates in the oversight of young people's orders, those who have offended. What we're going to try and do is work on the basis of presentations for around about 15/20 minutes time. Poor students are very nervous, be kind to them. And then what we'll do is have a discussion at the end. I think it would be unfair for us to look at individual pieces of work because they form part of a much bigger fabric of early intervention and prevention. And I'm sure people will have a specific view on that. Additionally, one change to the agenda, because we were in this airtight chamber in the middle of a warm day. After the third speaker, we will have a quick break, so if we need to run off and stretch our legs, they're more than welcome. One final thing before I start, or we start, sorry, to have the various presentations. I've sent a sheet around somewhere, and we've got lots of others, great, Sharon's got it. Please put your name down, your agency, and your email address if you like, and we will provide copies of the dissertations. I have a limited number here, and I know some people have got to leave early, so they'll take them as they go. All of these are available in PDF. If you'd like them, and I think particularly the schools who have worked so hard with us to get work done, if you'd like to use that, for example, with governing bodies and with Estin, you're very welcome to do that. I mean, the more we can share, the better. Okay, fortunately for you, I'm going to be quite quiet now for a while. And we will start with our first speaker, who is Alex Reeve. Alex? Hi. Would you like to come up? Alex will be talking about children first and offenders second.
Okay. Hi. Bear with me for a while because I will be a bit nervous when I'm presenting this. But this is my title. Feel free to read that quickly. So with this piece of research, I was looking at Harvard School, and as I'm sure some of you will know, it adopts quite a unique approach to the way it supports children. In particular, they support children who are at risk or are committing crime. And within that school, they embody principles that are very unique to Welsh policy, so the rights of the child, and from that the 7 core aims which you'll see in the Welsh Government's various manifestos, and also the All Wales Youth Offending strategy that also embodies that as well, so extending entitlement and so on. When I first started the project, I did a basic literature review, so I looked at intervention policies such as Sure Start and On Track, which I'm sure some of you have heard of. In the past they've had sort of limited success, although arguably they have had some successes nonetheless. So from that, I got introduced to Harvard School and I saw what sort of work they did with their children. And I wanted to see whether their approach to early intervention and prevention does embody the children first, offender second principle, which is very Welsh in its ways, because you would not see that in English policy. So from that title question, I developed 4 sub-questions, as you can see from there. So I wanted to see how they define early intervention and prevention, whether it's sort of in line with the Youth Justice Board and their various strategies. Also wanted to see what in particular they provided to children, what services, so counselling, maybe anger management and so on. And then I also wanted to see how they measure outcomes arising from the interventions, because that is obviously quite an important aspect of any intervention. You want to see how well they have done, and whether those who have been targeted for interventions have found them a positive experience. And obviously that brings me to the last question, which was, are children's perceptions of early intervention and prevention services positive? So from that, after the literature review, I also came up with 3 themes that also contributed to the research. So I wanted to provide a piece of research that filled in the gaps that other policies and other research have left open, which is actually getting the perspective of the children and the teachers, who are arguably the most important people who you want to hear from. And I also wanted to ascertain how risk factors are used, because, as I'm sure some of you will know, risk factors do have quite a contentious history, especially with youth justice, particularly issues to do with generalisation, and not actually using them to create interventions that deal with the root causes of crime. And again, with the generalisation, other research has found that other piece of research have sort of looked at risk factors and said, okay, that applies to one population, one group of children, let's just apply that across the whole board and see if that works. However, in a lot of cases that obviously hasn't worked too well. So I adopted a qualitative methodology, obviously because I wanted to get the voices, hear the voices of the children and the teachers. So I had a small sample of teachers who are involved with the interventions and a small sample of children who received the interventions. So they were all receiving interventions at the time and were all considered at risk of crime or committing crime at that point. So after the interviews I had with teachers, I was able to establish that a variety of data is used to determine which children should receive support. So really, they weren't just using standard risk factors and perhaps low academic achievement. They were actually using a variety of questionnaires, a lot of other data as well. So their level of poverty, whether they had been involved with crime previously. But I think the most important thing that I found was that they actually spoke to the children, and they actually, because they had such a good relationship with the children, they were able to talk to them on the same level, and there was a really noticeable level of trust that the students had with teachers, which was obviously very important. And that's probably not something you see in many schools, where students are actually quite happy to talk to their teachers and tell them things that otherwise would go unheard. And another interesting thing that was very unique to have it is that the support that they provide to children, so after school care and so on, and extra curricular activities and so on, that gets extended to their parents and the local community. So within Harvard, they will offer various courses to the parents and the local community, all free of charge. They can just come in and do as they please, really. And another great thing is that, obviously, as I've said before, the children, because they were able to speak to the teachers and they had such a good level of trust, and because that school embodies the extending entitlement principle and the United Nations rights of the child principles, children were able to play a part in actually developing the interventions that they wanted to have. So instead of being prescriptive in nature, the school was able to say, what do you want? How would that help you? How would that help your family? And that also got extended to the family as well. So the parents would come in and the teacher would say, what would you like to see? So and they also spoke to the community as well. One thing that I thought was very unique, again, is that they had a local police officer who came on site quite often. And the local community, because they weren't particularly keen on having police come to their houses, they used the school as a point of access where they could speak to the police about issues that were troubling them. So that also improved bonds with the community and the police, amongst other things as well. And then the last point, the last finding from the teachers' interview is that it wasn't merely formal interventions or services that were provided. The children were actually taken on sort of adventurous activities such as windsurfing. They were able to go fishing as well. So this went alongside standard formal interventions like counselling and so on. So what I discovered is that they had quite an all-round package that they had for the children. So there was the formal side and also the fun side, but both had quite similar outcomes in terms of the children's positive perspectives of it. So the children enjoyed the fun activities, obviously, and the formal activities as well, as you can see. So there's one quote that I got from the teachers, and that's to do with the pro-social activities, so like windsurfing and so on. So I'll just let you read that. Okay, so when I spoke to the children, that was in a focus group, and I used sort of semi-structured questions. I also sort of employed sort of non-conventional approaches to sort of try and get some good answers from them. Obviously, there was an issue of language barrier, and they being quite young children, they were quite playful as well, and I'm probably the last person they want to speak to. But I asked them to draw pictures, and I asked them to speak to each other about the questions I asked them. And those questions, for example, were: what do you think of school? How do you feel when you speak to a teacher? How do you feel after you've been to one of the services, which is called the Magic Room, where they're allowed to talk about their feelings at home and in school? And so, as you can see from that quote there, I love counselling, I love so to do, I like counselling, and Debbie, because she's a lovely woman. Debbie is a pseudonym, by the way, that's the real person. And one major thing that I found is that counselling is probably one of the highest regarded services in that school. Children could not stop speaking about it. I think probably because, well, as I actually found, is that there are certain issues that the children were able to speak about in that counselling session. Well, if they did not have that session, they would not be able to, talk about issues at home, which could manifest themselves later on and become a cause for concern. So I've got a few more quotes here. So, better because it's out of my system when I asked how they feel in the Magic Room. If I have a problem, I'll go tell the teacher. I don't have to have it inside me and worry about it. I want to go to the Magic Room because my mother and father have split up and that. And I thought that was quite powerful because without that service, where would that child have to speak about that? And if they didn't have that outlet, what would that turn into if they weren't able to speak about that issue and have some form of controlling the emotions that might have emerged from it? And also, once again, they confirmed how trustworthy they regarded the teachers. I feel fine because they promised they won't tell anyone. So after that, I did a discussion and I answered the questions and so on, and I was able to establish how they measure interventions and so on. And like I said before, they use a variety of techniques. So they will they will use a variety of questionnaires, which go straight to the children as well. So it's not just about improvements in academic ability and so on. They will actually ask the children what they think about the interventions. And that also comes down to face-to-face interviews as well. And the children, because they really respect the teachers, they are quite happy to tell them what they really think, which is another important aspect as well, because if they weren't able to establish that level of trust with the teachers, then it's likely, well, that's not likely, but you could argue that they would withhold some of their true feelings about the interventions. But that's not the case, and because of that they're able to shape the interventions and improve them and make them what the children want, and not what the teachers or anyone else expects them to be. And also the services promote pro-social behaviour and inspire new passions. So when they go fishing, when they go windsurfing, that gives the children an opportunity to develop a passion for something that without that intervention they would not have been able to access. And like that quote said beforehand, it gives them a way out of trouble and it occupies boredom, which otherwise could be occupied doing something else. So recommendations, I'd say further research with the inclusion of quantitative data. Obviously, because mine was all qualitative, there wasn't that tangible aspect to say, well, this is what these interventions have done as such. But then again, equally, the qualitative data is just as powerful because it is coming straight from the child's mouth, who says, I really enjoy doing this, this is what matters, and it has made a difference. However, if this were to be repeated or be built on, then I would recommend the inclusion of quantitative data. Longitudinal studies as well, you could measure the long-term effects that interventions have on the children. So you can see how that has an effect on long-term academic performance and whether crime has been indeed stopped or prevented. And yeah, replication in other schools. I mean, Harvard is just such a unique school, and the work that they do there, I really feel does need to be replicated in other schools, because going back to that quote where the child said, I want to go to the magic room because my parents are getting a divorce. Think of how many children out there who have all those issues at home and they have no way of getting all those emotions out, actually discussing them. Yeah, so that's the end of my presentation. Are there any questions at all?
We will do that in the end.
Yeah, okay.
Alex, never the nicest job kicking off, is it really? We have the next speaker also is Harvard School. I should say Harvard obviously was one of the main partner agencies, so, but we have something a little different as well. A slightly different presentation now by Emma Mullins. Emma looked at, well, Alex spoke about a range of interventions that were operationalised in Harvard School, and what Emma focused on was the family inclusion programme in that school. So,
right, me and Alex did do similar topics, so if I repeat what he said, I do apologise. I'm just trying to, right, okay. So my study was having a look at how Harvard reversed the negative effects of undesirable behaviour, and help to recognise and address issues and needs that could potentially lead to criminogenic behaviour by the pupils. So firstly, children living in multiple areas of deprivation and social breakdown, they're at more risk of having negative life experiences, as you all probably know, and having an early learning disadvantage as well. So what Harvard School do, they identify the families really early on through Flying Start, and that's at the age of 2. So they get to know the families, and they get to know their needs, and they go from that really. As Alex said as well, it's a rights, respect and ethos embedded through the school. I think Harvard's the only school, well, one of the only schools in Swansea that's been awarded an award by UNICEF, and that's for protecting and safeguarding their children, and this really is converted into real practice. And there's really strong community and family inclusion programs throughout the school. They're really wide-ranging, which I'll talk about later on, and they're really beneficial for the pupils and their families. And through this, they adopt a real family approach. This is the main themes I looked at was key challenges for family inclusion was the first one. I felt this was really important because families who are unsettled or experiencing stress or pressure, that could go on and they could have things like mental health issues, and obviously that could have a really destructive impact on the family as a whole. So involvement is sometimes necessary for the parents, so they receive sufficient care and support wherever they may be. The second theme I looked at was the diversity of culture and religion through the school. Harvard is a really multicultural area, and it's got a lot of ethnic minority children in the school. And I was really, really impressed how the head teacher made sure that no child, I don't know whether you've been to Harvard School, but the school really reflects on these differences. It's got a really good ethos and respects everybody's values and beliefs. And this doesn't only help us understand their cultures, but it also helps us to identify the diversity between our differences and their differences as well. I looked at education. Children from broken families or unsettled families are 3 times more likely to commit crimes, and they've got higher exclusion rates and dropping out of school. In Harvard, although there are a lot of children deemed to be at risk, and a lot of them are needing family interventions, their actual attendance is above the national average, and all of these children are achieving what's being expected of them, and I think this reflects on the school's good practice. The last theme I looked at was community safety. The risk of truancy and antisocial behaviour rises up to 3 times if there's low family attachment and poor parental supervision. So the delivery of community safety in Harvard School is addressed by the children have been taken to places like Coffee Police Station. They've been in the cells, so they've experienced that. They've been shown the damage that lighting fires can make, so they know the consequences. They've also seen drug syringes and drugs wrappers, and so they really are aware of the dangers. And they've got a really good relationship with the police, and they respect them, and as a result, no children from the school has received an antisocial behaviour orders, and that's been for 3 years. So that just goes to show how, what positive impacts it's having on the children. For my methodology, I thought it was really important to engage with the teachers, the children and the families. So I use focus groups with the children, interviews with the teachers, and questionnaires with the families. I did initially want to do questionnaires with the parents, but because of extreme language barriers, some parents couldn't leave the house until after 6 due to cultural reasons, and I couldn't always get a translator on hand. It was decided that I'd use questionnaires. And obviously, due to the sensitivity of some of the topics and the questions, engagement was quite difficult for some children and parents. So with my findings, the first thing that came out of it was the learning and development. So Harvard School state that they measure the success by using PASS and Boxer profiles. So they look at emotional and social well-being hand in hand with their education. So they say they work hard to keep children and families engaged, and because they're happier, it highlights the children who are being excluded. And because they're happy here, then the children want to come to school, and they're offered, they maximise the opportunities for them. What I felt was more striking was the children recognised the importance of coming to school and getting a good education. I had lots of nice comments from them. I've had to be a bit selective here, but one of the comments I had was from a little boy, and he said, we've got the right to make mistakes, and we've got the responsibility to learn from them. I thought that was nice because the children know it's okay to make mistakes, and it's okay not to be perfect. And another little boy said, when we're being naughty, they speak to us about the consequences. We don't have to get the police involved. And this just goes to show that the children respect the authorities, and you know, we really want to do well in school. The next theme I looked at was the rationale and provisions of interventions. As Alex said, like I'm going to be repeating it, sorry, but we get involved with loads of positive activities. There's so much after school clubs, windsurfing, dance troops, youth clubs, and children who would usually be involved in concerts have actually been given lead parts. I thought this was really important because children here are not marginalised, they're not excluded, and they're treated equally regardless of their background. Yeah, and one of the teachers said that they give the children interviews. When their staff being interviewed, they sit on the panels and they ask them questions as well. I think this is really important because the school feels that participation is paramount. And another little boy said that Bernardo's has helped me with anger problems and helps me to calm myself down when I am angry. There's loads of different programs. There's self-esteem building programs, anger management and body confidence programs, and that's specifically for girls with confidence issues. And evidently here, the interventions that are implemented through the school is having a really positive effect and are really valued by the children. The next theme I looked at was the relationships between the providers of services for children, families and the school. The first thing, like I said, is bilingual teaching assistants on hand to remove the language barriers, so no child dependencies are excluded. If the parents have got a concern, they're able to come to the school and they're able to disclose how they're feeling. The school runs meetings as well, not just about their academic top things, but they discuss living circumstances and home life. Some of the teachers said that some of the children have never had a toothbrush. They didn't know what brushing their teeth was, and so because of that, they have things like toothbrushing classes, and you know, they look at their health aspect of it as well, and support with everyday needs. And one of the quote I've got is, the school has been a first contact for support. The school has guided me with help and advice and provided emotional support for my children. And that's from one of the parents. And I think that quote just demonstrates that Harvard School are critical in supporting families and promoting their health and well-being. And recommendations is just to undertake additional research involving engagement with more practitioners and the children. And despite the cuts in the government, just to continue working as multi-agency partnerships. And there needs to be more emphasis on promoting the rights of the child and their families. So just to summarise, the services and programmes provided through the school are highly valued. They're aimed at supporting the pupils' learning, behavioural and language needs, along with their emotional needs. And the school appears to be integral to having strong relationships with the parents and carers. Many families' needs without the school's help would not have been reached. The right of the child being embedded in the school is clearly having a positive effect on the children. They all know their rights, they know what they're entitled to, and this empowerment has played an active role in the work that the school does, and more importantly, has helped the pupils' engagement and their learning process as well. And there's just been excessive recognitions and appreciation expressed by the parents of the school. I've had so many lovely comments from the parents. They were just so overwhelmed with everything that Harvard School do for them. And it just goes to show that the school does go above and beyond its measures to ensure that all children have equal opportunities, and none of them are excluded by social or economic factors. And I just want to finish off with a quote at the bottom, just to say, we go to the end of the world, we recognise that we need to engage with families and parents in order to best support our children. I thought that was really lovely. And that's it.
political statement in there as well, which is always rather nice. Give more money to local government. I'm very happy to say that. And universities while you're at it. Anyway, those two pieces of work hopefully give a flavour, and I will say one thing today, and I say this as the, thank you, as the supervisor for all the students. What we're really doing here is having sort of 10-15 minutes summaries of what they've come up with. You've got in those documents they produce about 11,000 words per project, so you know, if any of this is actually striking any interesting chords with you or chords of interest, then please do have a look. One thing that struck me as I was reviewing the dissertations is actually the strength of the qualitative data we've had from all this. Absolutely fantastic statements from the children, really in-depth and really sort of incisive comments as well from teachers and parents. So, you know, please avail yourself of those. So we've had two so far. First of all, early intervention and prevention at Harvard School, and a focus as well on family intervention process at Harvard School. We'll next have a focus on another primary school in Swansea, and I should probably declare an interest because I'm a governor of that school. It's Blind and Mice School, another excellent school I must say. I say because the head's there and she slapped me otherwise. But a good school. And what we have now is Leanne Pickering. Now Leanne did a piece of work looking at whether the school's family intervention programme makes a difference and actually helps children not to get involved in either offending or antisocial behaviour. Once Leanne's finished, we will take, say, a 10-minute break. It is warm in here, and then we'll carry on. So, over to you, Leanne.
Bear with me, I have been very well for the past week, so I might go a bit croaky or a bit nasally at times. So yeah, I'm Leanne Pickering. I conducted research at Blind Mice Primary School based around family interventions and whether they help prevent children's involvement in offending or antisocial behaviour. A little bit of background about Blind Mice. It's also a rights perspective school, and it also focuses on restorative practice, which Mariah will talk about next. It's also a deprived area, and the school does try its hardest to help include all children, to help them strive for the best they can get, both in education and also in their day-to-day life and their family situations. Right. So firstly, let me explain what family-based interventions are. Basically, the school, Helen Spencer and also Mo, work together to develop programs, group sessions and individual one-to-one meetings for pupils, parents, guardians or any family member that is connected to the child. These sessions and meetings might include helpful information about parenting, dealing with a child's behaviour and encouragement of developing strong relationships within the family. Some of the programs that they run are parenting and raising sessions, So to do, which stands for someone to talk to, something to do, where they also arrange out-of-school activities, and I think this year they're going to see the rugby, hopefully, and also parenting skills. They've also started to look at family learning signature, which is a relatively new programme that is coming into place around Wales a lot more. It places the family in charge of what they need and providing support and engagement with the families to help build relationships. Right, so my research itself, I looked at 4 main objectives. They included, what does family inclusion mean to participants? What services are provided within Blind and Mice Primary School to help prevent children becoming involved with offending or antisocial behaviour? What are the participants' views on family intervention programmes provided? And how does Blind and Mice School evidence the progress that is made to prevent future offending and antisocial behaviour? Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to change slide. There we go. Okay, so my methodology, what did I do? I conducted interviews and focus groups. It included 12 pupils, 9 parents or guardians, and 4 members of staff. All that I interviewed and were in focus groups attended or ran the programmes. All interviews and focus groups were arranged by the school with full ethical considerations taken into account. All participants were allowed to freely withdraw and consent was provided multiple times. All participants' identities were not released, and throughout my slideshow there are pseudonyms at the end of each quote, so you won't be able to identify who the person is. Right. So after I gathered all my findings, I broke them down into answering my 4 objectives that were at the start. Firstly, I'll look at what does family intervention mean for the participants. Basically, it became obvious within the research that participants understood that family-based interventions incorporate the whole family and friends of the family in the education to counteract and prevent a child becoming involved with offending or antisocial behaviour. It can be seen that participants view family interventions as being able to change behaviour of not only the pupils but also of the family involved. It also worked with extended family and educated them as well. From my quote, it basically, obviously you can read it, but I found this one of the best that I picked out because it really emphasised the male friends and families, because there's been a lot of research done recently into father figures and other males in a family and how it could help increase the less likelihood of somebody becoming involved with offending behaviour. And the school itself put on a special programme for the male family member and their child. So it works with building that the bond between those two to help develop a better, stronger relationship so that they have that support. Right, next one. So next, I looked at what services are provided within Blind and Mullins Primary School to help prevent children becoming involved with offending or antisocial behaviour. I broke this section down into two different answers. I looked at group sessions and one-to-one meetings. Firstly, I'll talk about group sessions. Basically, group sessions provide parents and guardians and other family members with the support that they needed and the views from other parents to help them to see that they aren't alone and are not the only ones that are having these problems, and that many other people are also feeling the same way that they are, and that they're not alone, and that not only can they talk to the school, but there's other family members, other families out there that they can talk to, and they all understand each other, and that it's not just them specifically that has that problem. For the children that I interviewed, it said that it provided them time to spend with other children and parents. Trips and activities were arranged so that if pupils were good, they both in school and also at these programmes like Slate to Do, they would be able to go on them. It provided them with the incentive to behave and work harder on a reward system. One of the pupils actually said that it gives them a good experience because they also work with people from the YOS come in, like Phil Bone about antisocial behaviour. So it gives them that insight into what actually is antisocial behaviour and what is actually grouped underneath it and whether they are behaving in an antisocial way. They also talk to the local police officer. They come in and talk to them about it as well. So really for group session it provided a whole inclusion, and it made them not feel alone, which was the main thing, and that they had lots of people to talk to, and that it's not just them on their own. Right, so one-to-one meetings. Okay, so parents and guardians and pupils sometimes found it easier to talk on their own because it helped them to develop levels of trust, as well as talk about more personal issues that might have been happening at home. It's also about developing a personalised routine and help for the families. So as you can see, that one-to-one meetings could have been just drop-in, they're having an issue at home they just want to talk about, so they come in and talk to a member of staff. And it made it more personal for them. It made it so that it wasn't just a generalised, try this, it was a more, let's look hard at what problems you're having and how we can overcome it. And they built up routines for them. So if this doesn't work, maybe try this, but on a more personalised and individualised level. Right. What are the participants' views on the family intervention programmes provided? Basically, I had so much positive research back from them, and especially the kids, they couldn't stop talking about how fun it was. Basically, all participants found that family-based interventions were really helpful, and many of the parents are finding changes in their own behaviour and not just their child's. By finding a way of understanding their child's behaviour, it meant that they were able to combat it and tackle it in a good way before it got out of hand. It has helped families to tackle problems that are deep-rooted to hopefully prevent antisocial and offending behaviours from actually developing. Participants thought that without the help from Blind and Mullins, their child's behaviour could have deteriorated, and some children themselves thought that the bond between them and their parents wouldn't be as strong. So it was obvious that there was a lot of positive information coming back from the children and the parents and staff members, that the work they are doing is helping to combat the behavioural issues that are having at the moment, And a lot of them really do think, and I know one individual in particular, she really felt that she didn't think she'd be able to cope with her children if it wasn't for the help and support from Blind and Mice Primary School. And so it gave her that support network that maybe she didn't have at home, and she could really rely on them and like talk to them and talk about how she felt. And it actually helped her child to stop being as aggressive as they used to be, and it helped her withdraw herself from the situation and look at it and think maybe shouting at him isn't the best way, maybe not forcing him to do stuff is the best way. So really thinking about what she's doing to help him or her behave better. Right, so how does Blind and Mice Primary School evidence the progress that is being made to prevent future offending or antisocial behaviour? So there are multiple methods used to document the progress that the children and parents are making. Through recording bad behaviours alongside the development of a database where reports can be written and the progress of the child can be made. Tackling their behaviour from as soon as they came into the school through Flying Start allow them to see from early on like what children do need to be worked with straight away. It also helped them to put in place, not for just the child but the parent, to work together on preventing antisocial and offending behaviours. So overall my findings showed me that there was quite a positive response from all the participants, and that a lot of the kids really enjoyed all the programmes that they went to, and the parents finding them really helpful. So, my recommendations, which is always a bit of a tricky bit. Basically, I only had one comment that came out from the interviews and focus groups, and that was basically just the group dynamics. But as everybody knows, it's tricky to get a group dynamic to work fine when it's a variety of people. Only one participant actually mentioned it, but they said that even though sometimes the group dynamics don't work, it didn't really matter because they knew that they could go on a one-to-one basis as well. So it was just picking the groups that they could talk in and others that they couldn't, and maybe if that issue that they couldn't talk about, they knew that they could go somewhere else, and that it wasn't just, oh, I don't fit in that group, I can't talk. They could go directly to the school and have a one-to-one chat about it. And I personally think that a future longitudinal study would work fantastic at Blind and Mice, just to see if the programmes are really having a long-term influence and isn't just a short-term fix. Because we're having like really good research come back saying that it's working straight away, but maybe we just need to check that it isn't just a fix and that it does work further along down the line, and that maybe looking at schools that they can then go into and focusing on whether the programmes that they have there really emphasises what they're learning at the primary schools. Because if it just stops at the primary school, they themselves change at that age, and as they get older they change and develop. So if we don't keep supporting them throughout, it's just going to stop. So there really needs to be a continuancy between the two schools, at least just a connection, so they know that they're not alone when it does get trickier as they get older. Right, so before I bore you all with my horrible nasally voice, I would like to conclude that this provides a unique insight into the fantastic work done at Blind and Mice Primary School. It contributes to the current literature of family-based interventions by looking at it within a school environment. Without the hard work and the effort that has been put in by the school and the organisations that they work with, like the YOS, the effective and supportive atmosphere that the school provides would not be possible, and therefore the change in the bad behaviour and prevention of the development of antisocial or offending behaviours would not be possible. And just my last quote that says, "All young people need a chance to strive and develop in a society where help is present and they are not hindered by their parents' background. After all, it's not the be-all and end-all. Family-based interventions in schools provide another option." And I found that one of my most powerful quotes throughout the whole of my dissertation, because it really emphasises how the staff feel and how they do believe that family-based interventions and the help that the school provides really can change a child's future. Thank you very much.